come all, to a world filled with dragons galore, dinosaurs, elves, and so much more. In this place we've never been before. A tree might be a secret door or nothing more. Here we are racing at every twist and turn. With every page we just get hooked more and more. This is it, we have reached the end. Will we win or will we suffer even more?
Hello and welcome back to Crimson's Corner. For all of you that were wondering, on Spot the Beanie, Vetch was hanging out last week. Where will he be this week? Who knows? Hello everyone. We are getting back into Catwings today. It's absolutely unfair, the thrush cried. Unjust, the finch agreed. Intolerable, yelled the blue jay. I don't see why, a mouse said. You've always had wings. Now they do. What's unfair about that? The fish in the creek said nothing. Fish never do. Few people know what fish think about injustice or anything else. I was bringing a twig to the nest just this morning and a cat flew down. A cat flew down from the top of the home oak and grinned at me in midair, the thrush said. And all the other songbirds cried, Shocking! Unheard of! Not allowed! You could try tunnels, said the mouse, and trotted off. The birds had to learn to get along with the flying tabbies. Most of the birds, in fact, were more frightened and outraged than really endangered, since they were far better flyers than Roger, Thelma, Harriet, and James. The birds never got their wings tangled up in a pine branch, and never absent-mindedly bumped into tree trunks, and when pursued they could escape by speeding up or taking evasive actions. But they were alarmed, and with good cause, about their fledglings. Many birds had eggs in the nest now. When the babies hatched, how could they be kept safe from a cat who could fly, up and perch on the slenderest branch among the thickest leaves? It took a while for the owl to understand this. Owl is not a quick thinker. She is a long thinker. It was late in spring one evening, when she was gazing fondly at her two owlets, that she saw James flitting by, chasing bats, and she slowly thought, This will not do! And softly Owl spread her great gray wings and silently flew after James, her talons opening. The flying tabbies had made their nest in a hole halfway up a big elm, above fox and coyote level and too small for raccoons to get into. Thelma and Harriet were washing each other's necks and talking over the day's adventures when they heard a pitiful crying at the foot of the tree. James! Cried Harriet. He was crouching under the bushes, all scratched and bleeding, and one of his wings dragged upon the ground. It was the owl, he said, when his sisters had helped him climb painfully up the tree trunk to their home hole. I just escaped. She caught me, but I scratched her and she let me go for a moment. And just then Roger came scrambling into the nest with his eyes round and black and full of fear. She's after me, he cried. The owl! They all washed James' wounds till he fell asleep. Now we know how the little birds feel, said Thelma grimly. What will James do? Harriet whispered. Will he ever fly again? He'd better not, said a soft, large voice just outside the door. The owl was sitting there. The tabbies looked at one another. They did not say a word till morning came. At sunrise, Thumb appeared cautiously out. The owl was gone. Until this evening, said Thelma. From then on, they had to hunt in the daytime and hide in their nest all night. For the owl thinks slowly, but the owl thinks long. James was ill for days and could not hunt at all. When he recovered, he was very thin and could not fly much, for his left wing soon grew stiff and lame. He never complained. He sat for hours by the creek, his wings folded, fishing. The fish did not complain either. They never do. One night of early summer, the tabbies were all curled in the hole, rather tired and discouraged. A raccoon family was quarreling loudly in the next tree. Thelma had found nothing to eat all day but a shrew, which gave her indigestion. A coyote had chased Roger away from the wood rat he had been about to catch that afternoon. James' fishing had been unsuccessful. The owl kept flying past on silent wings, saying nothing. Two young male raccoons in the next tree started to fight, cursing and shouting insults. The other raccoons all joined in, screeching and scratching and swearing. It sounds just like the old alley, James remarked. Do you remember the shoes? Harry asked dreamily. She was looking quite plump, perhaps because she was so small. Her sister and brothers had become thin and rather scruffy. Yes, James said. Some of them chased me once. Do you remember the hands? Roger asked. Yes, Thelma said. Some of them picked me up once when I was just a kitten. What did they do, the hands? Harriet asked. They squeezed me, it hurt, and the hands person was shouting, Wings! Wings! It has wings! That's what it kept shouting in its silly voice and squeezing me. What did you do? I bit it, Thelma said with modest pride. I bit it and it dropped me and I ran back to Mother under the dumpster. I didn't know how to fly yet. I saw one today, said Harriet. What, a hands, a shoes? Said Thelma. A human being, said James. A human being, Roger said. Yes, said Harriet. It saw me too. Did it chase you? Did it kick you? Did it throw things at you? No, it just stood and watched me flying, and its eyes got round like ours. Mother always said, Thelma remarked thoughtfully, that if you found the right kind of hands, you'd never have to hunt again. But if you found the wrong kind, it'd be worse than dogs, she said. I think this one is the right kind, said Harriet. What makes you think so? Roger asked, sounding like their mother. Because it ran off and came back with a plate full of dinner, Harriet said, and it put the dinner down on the big stump at the edge of the field. The field where we scared the cows that day, you know? And then it went off quite a way and sat down and just watched me. So I flew over and ate the dinner. It was an interesting dinner, like what we used to get in the alley, but fresher. And, said Harriet, sounding like their mother, I'm going back there tomorrow and see what's on that stump. You just be careful, Harriet Tabby, said Thelma, sounding even more like their mother. The next day, when Harriet went to the big stump at the edge of the cow pasture, flying low and cautiously, she found a tin pie plate of meat scraps and kibbled cat food waiting for her. The girl from Overhill Farm was also waiting for her, sitting about 20 feet away from the stump and holding very still. Susan Brown was her name, and she was 8 years old. She watched Harriet fly out of the woods and hover like a fat hummingbird over the stump, then settle down. Fold her wings neatly and eat. Susan Brown held her breath. Her eyes grew round. The next day, when Harry and Roger flew cautiously out of the woods and hovered over the stump, Susan was sitting about 15 feet away. and besides her sat her 12-year-old brother, Hank. He had not believed a word she said about flying cats. Now his eyes were perfectly round, and he was holding his breath. Harry and Roger settled down to eat. You didn't say there were two of them, Hank whispered to his sister. Harry and Roger sat on the stump licking their whiskers clean. You didn't say there were two of them, Roger whispered to his sister. I didn't know, both the sisters whispered back. There was only one yesterday. But they look nice, don't they? The next day, Hank and Susan put out 2 pie tins of cat dinner on the stump, then went 10 steps away, sat down in the grass, and waited. Harriet flew boldly from the woods and alighted on the stump. Roger followed her. Then, "Oh, look!" Susan whispered. Came Thelma, flying very slowly with a disapproving expression on her face, and finally, "Oh, look!" Susan whispered. James, flying low and lame, flapped over to the stump, landed on it, and began to eat. He ate and ate and ate. He even growled once at Thelma, who moved to the other pie tin. The 2 children watched the 4-winged cat. Harriet, quite full, washed her face and watched the children. Thelma finished the last tasty kibble, watched her left front paw, and gazed at the children. Suddenly, she flew up from the stump and straight at them. They ducked as she went over. She flew right round both their heads and then back to the stump. "Testing," she said to Harriet, James, and Roger. "If she does it again, don't catch her," Hank said to Susan. "It'd scare her off." "You think I'm stupid?" Susan hissed. They sat still. The cats sat still. Cows ate grass nearby. The sun shone. "Kitty," Susan said in a soft, high voice. "Kitty, kitty, kitty, kitty cat, kitty cat, kitty wings, cat wings." He had jumped off the stump into the air, performed a cartwheel, and flew loop-the-loop over to Susan. She landed on Susan's shoulder and sat there, holding on tight and purring in Susan's ear. "I will never, ever catch you, or cage you, or do anything to you you don't want me to do," Susan said to Harriet. "I promise." "Hank, you promise too." "Grrr," said Harriet. "I promise and will never ever tell anybody else," Hank said, rather fiercely. "Ever, because you know how people are. If people saw them..." "I promise," Susan said. She and Hank shook hands, promising. Roger flew gracefully over and landed on Hank's shoulder. "Grrr," said Roger. "They could live in the old barn," Susan said. "Nobody ever goes there but us." "They could live in the old barn," Susan said. "Nobody ever goes there but us. There's that dovecote up in the loft with all those holes in the wall where the doves flew in and out." "We can take hay up there and make them a place to sleep," Hank said. Roger. Very softly and gently, Hank raised his hand and stroked Roger right between the wings. "Ooh, ooh," said James, watching. He jumped down off the stump and came trotting over to the children. He sat down near Susan's shoes. Very softly and gently, Susan reached down and scratched James under the chin and behind the ears. James said and drooled a little on Susan's shoe. "Oh, well," said Thelma, having cleaned up the last of the cold roast beef. She arose in the air, flew over with great dignity, sat right down in Hank's lap, folded her wings, and said, "Purr, purr, purr." "Oh, Hank," Susan whispered, "their wings are furry." Oh, James, Harriet whispered. Their hands are kind. And that is the end of Catwings. What will we start next week? Who knows? But that is it for this episode of Crimson's Corner. Tune in next time